Good evening, everybody. We're coming to you live online from Missouri City, Sugarland, Texas. And we've been meeting here now for 7 years. And it's really a fabulous privilege for me to be coming out here and learning with so many wonderful people every Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. For more details, you're welcome to visit torchweb.org. So, in this week's Parsha, Parshas Vayishlach, we see how Jacob, is about to meet his brother. Now, we know that the last time they met was when Jacob had received the blessing from his father, the firstborn blessing, which was rightfully coming to him because he had purchased it. So, after receiving that firstborn blessing, he was concerned that his brother was going to kill him, right? His mother Rebecca told him, watch out, he's out for you. So she told him, go to my brother's house, and he's been there ever since. He got married with 2 daughters of his uncle, so his first cousin, I guess. And she said, and now he is about to meet up with his brother. It's many years later. And he's about to meet up with his brother Esau. And we know that Jacob prepared with 3 different strategies. Okay? The first 2 make a lot of sense. But the third one seems a little bit misplaced, perhaps. The first was arms. War. There might be war. Now, we know he split the camp. So he had half the camp here and half the camp there. If one dies, the other one can flee and survive. But so he took up arms. Ready, in case we need war, we're ready for war. Number 2, gifts. Let's first work with a nice appeasement process. And if that doesn't work, then we have war. But then we have a third component we see here, and that is that he prayed. And the question is, how important is the prayer component when you're dealing with a military strategy, a peace process? How important is prayer? So we see that our sages tell us that prayer is far more important than arms. And prayer is far more important than presents and gifts and appeasement. Prayer is the essence of everything. If a person doesn't take the time to pray, see, he's not connecting with the higher power. He's not connecting with the source of everything. Really, what we have in our existence as creatures of the Almighty is an ability to relate with God, to interact with God. And how do we do that? Through prayer. The tool that we use to get into prayer is humility, right? We have to recognize that God, being the creator of heaven and earth, God who gives us everything we have, has the ability to change the circumstances, has the ability. We see an interesting idea in Genesis, in Exodus. It says, Hashem yilachem lachem, va'atem tacharishun. Hashem will fight for you. Hashem will go to war for you. All you have to do is do the right thing. We see with the war against the people of Amalek in the desert, right? What did the Jews have? They had nothing. Right? You see King David's battle. David was such a great soldier. He was the scholar. He was the sage. Right? We see all of it throughout the history. It was the righteous of righteous, most spiritual, who went out to war. I mean, they weren't the youngest with machine guns. Right? The most skilled. They were the most holy. It's because forever we've realized that it's not the arms. It's, if we look at modern history, we see that it makes no sense that Israel should win even one war. Think of the 6-Day War. Think of the Yom Kippur War. Think of the Milchemet Shlomo Galil, right? The 1982 War. You think of any of the wars that Israel has battled, it doesn't make sense from a physical sense, it doesn't compute how they can win. But from a spiritual sense, it is true. Because if we recognize that all power is from the Almighty, if we recognize that everything is from Hashem, so even if we have less arms, if we have less, think of the War of Independence, 1948. It is, right? Do you know how many planes they had? They had very, very few planes. You can count them on one hand. Right? But they had miracles. So everyone thought they had this big air force. And they found old planes from World War II. They were able to refurbish them. And they flew 24 hours a day. They had different shifts of pilots sleeping and getting ready for, as soon as it lands, next pilot came in, continued, kept on flying. So, yeah, we had some success in our military prowess, but we cannot have that physical success without the spiritual component. See, we live in a world where we have these two powers battling against each other, the physical and the spiritual. The spiritual is far more powerful than the physical, in the global sense. The problem is that if we become physical people, like Esav was a physical person, so dealing with a person who's completely physical, that was the biggest contrast between Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov was completely spiritual, and Esav was completely physical. Right? And that's the battle we're constantly facing with in our own day-to-day life, is how much of our life are we going to allow to be controlled by the physical versus how much are we going to dedicate and uplift through the spiritual. And these are the two different forces that we're constantly going to be facing throughout our lives. Yaakov represented the spiritual side. That's why Yaakov, we see just prior to this in this week's Parsha, where Yaakov had the battle. He had a battle with an angel. Right? What was this battle with an angel? What was the purpose of that battle? What's the story behind it? Well, it was an angel representing a power not allowing him to connect spiritually. So where does it chop him? In his hip. Right? In his hip, in the most critical point. The largest, most powerful artery we have. Most important. That's where it's going to hit you. You're going to try to connect on a spiritual level, we'll take you down from a physical place. And Yaakov was able to overcome it. Right? And there's a lot to discuss about this topic of his individuality, of being a unique individual. That we need to be... spiritual Jewish growth is by individuals. It's not by the masses. It doesn't work by masses. We don't go by masses. We go by individuals. Each individual has all the tools and all the potential they need to succeed. But back to what we said earlier. Yaakov knew, number one, gifts. He's dealing with a brother who's very physical. He was ready to sell his firstbornhood, right? For what? For lentil soup. Because he's hungry. And then he says, what's this, the firstborn? It's nothing. Right? He didn't have any connection. So let's try to appease him through his physical. If that doesn't work and he still attacks, okay, so we have to defend with battle, with arms. But arms will never work without the spiritual. It will never work without the spiritual. Any one of our pursuits that we try, it can make sense on paper. Right? The investment should work. Because everything makes sense on paper. And yet we know people who are great businessmen, they lost their investment. Why? Because there wasn't a blessing in it. And there are many people who have, business ideas that make no sense, and yet they're so successful. There is blessing in what they do. Yaakov understood this component. Yaakov understood that if I want to have any success with this upcoming episode that he's about to have with his brother, I need to have God right here. I need to pray. I need to bring God into the experience so that it doesn't cloud my operation. I need to have God with me. And that's why he used the power of prayer. So I think for us, it's a very important thing. We all face struggles. Every single one of us face struggles, right? We all face struggles. Everyone has their own personal lives that face struggles. And we can't forget that there's no struggle that God can't help us with. There's no such thing that God can't help us with the struggle that we're dealing with. So what do? Infuse the struggle with prayer. Infuse spirituality into it. We could do a mitzvah for the merit of success. There are people before they do a business deal, they immediately sign into the agreement an amount that they give to charity, so that it adds the extra blessing, sort of adding the spiritual component into the physical experience. But the idea is not to forget God. As much as we're busy and we feel the physical objects around us, we get convinced that we understand, we've got it all. We got it all figured out. Until one thing goes wrong. And then suddenly we realize how powerless we are. That's why we have prayer. Prayer does not mean we sit in a rigid environment, shaking back and forth, reading ancient text. That's also prayer. But prayer means that we, wherever we are, whether you're in your car, you're by your computer, you're in the library, you're in the grocery store, you're lying in bed, you're reading a book, you can close your eyes and talk to God. He's right there. Right here, Yaakov's in the field. What does he do? He prays. God's everywhere. You could be at a red light. Pray. Talk to God. Have a conversation. Yeah, it's true we have a minyan. Yeah, it's true we have a synagogue. Okay, so that's where we have a formal structure to prayer. And that's important. It's critical because when you come in a committee, so to speak, when a committee comes to ask, like, okay, I'm overwhelmed, right? Okay, fine. What do you want? That's the power of a minyan, right? When you have 10 adults who come and request, any request, it gives much more credence, much more power. That's why we make every effort to pray with a minyan. But even without a minyan, at home, wherever you are, prayer is the most powerful tool we have to communicate and interact with the Almighty. To talk to God directly and ask Him about your own little issues. Yeah, what am I going to do? What am I going to do about this I have this meeting, I don't know what to do. Talk to God. I need your help, God. Please help me out. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. I'm facing a struggle. Please help me. Talk to God. Because more than you know, He wants to talk to you back. And He wants to answer you. And He wants to communicate with you, and He does. We just have to be alert and aware to hear God's response. That's what it's about. Prayer means, you know what, I recognize I don't have the power of everything. Let me speak to the one who does. Right? You have someone already in a special place. He's called God, creator of heaven and earth. He can handle it. He got you into the problem, He can get you out of the problem. Or He did not get you, you got yourself into the problem, He can get you out of it. That's prayer. Yaakov realized, I'm in a bind here. The only way I can talk, the only way I can get out of this is when I talk to God. So with that, my friends, we're going to sign off here. Coming to you live from Missouri City, Sugar Land, every Thursday night. Thank you very much for joining us. If you like this video, you're welcome to please like and share this video so that other people can see it, your friends can see it, and we can expand the word of Torah throughout the world. Thank you, and have a terrific evening, everybody. Have a good Shabbos, and you're welcome to join us here in Missouri City, Sugar Land for our weekly class at 7:30 on Thursdays. Have a fantastic Shabbos, everybody. Thank you for joining us.